Journey to the Savage Planet is fun and flawed. The game focuses on exploration and combat.
This machine will copy you into its memory, delete your body, and then print a copy of it 5 feet away. Hey, look at that. You picked up some carbon. Good for you.
The game starts you out with very little, and it's up to you to explore and find new pieces of equipment and find resources to create more items to help you out. A large majority of the game is focused on exploration. The setup of the levels puts you into situations where you can focus on your main objective, or go in some different directions and find additional items or complete side quests. Like in other Metroidvania games, you will find areas or spots you can't get to until you have a certain item to get through it. While this isn't anything new, I do like this aspect of the game. You sort of make mental notes as you are exploring to come back to their older spots to find newer items or secrets. And like in many Metroidvania games, it's especially satisfying when you figure out a way to use your new equipment in older areas. These new areas usually lead to additional and useful items for you to use, and each time you find something, it's really satisfying. As you explore the levels, you will earn new items that will help you out in the environment. Early on, you earn the ability to throw down this blob that creates a jumping pad for you to use. Later on, you gain the ability to have an item that you can throw that creates points for you to grapple to. Using these different items and not following your main objective are some of the best parts of the game. Deciding to go right when the game wants you to go left can lead to some fun player-initiated exploration that feels more earned when you grab that item at the end of that side path. Early on, you really do not know what you're going to find, and that early mystery helps to keep some of these events really interesting. In addition to the different items that you will find, you will also have access to different equipment upgrades that improve your traversal. The two main ones that you use are the grapple along with the hover boost jump. The grapple can only be used at certain grapple points, or points that are created by you. The grapple is really fun to use, especially when there are a few grapple points chained together and you get a nice swing in. The grapple can also be used to ride different rail lines, and they're especially fun to do because of how fast you go. As you wander around the levels, you will find these orange blobs that you will ingest, and these will slowly help to improve your stamina and health. Exploring is where the game feels the best. When you look at some of the larger areas and just focus on how to use what you have to collect new collectibles or secrets, it's the most rewarding. Journey to the Savage Planet will invoke that feeling of knowing where you need to go and choosing to go in the opposite direction to find something else. The game lets you enjoy the game in online co-op, and I think exploring the environments are even better with a friend. As you will see later in this review, I do think that this game should have potentially only focused on the exploration. While you are not exploring, you will be in combat with the different wildlife on the planet.
Getting a weird energy signature from a nearby floating island. Might want to check it out.
Combat is rather simple and not one of the game's strongest areas. You have access to a pistol along with some other items that you find in the environment that will help you out with exploration, as doubling also as a weapon like grenade. Most of the enemies just take a few hits and are not really that fun to fight. If an enemy gets too close, you can choose to use your melee attack, which is just a series of slaps, and I always enjoyed doing this because of how silly it looked. The shooting lacks any sense of punch to it. It feels rather weak. There are a few enemies that you fight to help change up these normal events, but the fighting can be rather annoying based on how you dodge and how tedious the fights become. The game feels much more focused on exploration rather than combat. The combat feels secondary and not fleshed out like the exploration. The boss fight situations do help to breathe some life into combat. The boss fights do make combat more interesting in that it requires you to find the glowy weak parts, and that is paired with some of the platforming. The boss fights were more fun than the normal combat, but it didn't really go any further than that. The upgrading was another fun area in the game, and it always made you feel like you were working towards something new that you could tangibly use. You can work on improving different aspects of your suit, along with improving your pistol for combat. And lastly, before I get into the flaws with this game, I do really like the silly and light tone of this game. This is really well done in the crazy in-game commercials that help to paint the picture of this world that you're in. These were really creative and a good use of live action.
Wedgie Burger. Remember me? You said I'd never be back. Well, guess who's back? Wedgie Burger's back open. Health violations no longer a problem. They tried to shut me down. They couldn't take me out. They wanted me to shut up. You can't stop the wedge. Wedgie Burger, come down, get some potato wedges. Bring the kids run the wedge later. Mama's eating for free, okay?
Wanna talk to some of the hottest slime forms in the galaxy? Chat with the most seductive soft bodies in space for a discreet and nebulous encounter. No bones about it. Call 1-900-BLOB-LOVE.
I generally enjoyed the exploration and had issues with the combat system along with encountering other flaws. One odd omission in this game was how there wasn't a world map to let you see everything in connection to everything else. The game does a good job of letting you know where you need to go and you can fast travel to previous areas, but I think a map would have only provided more information to the player, and this would have been especially useful when you're going back to older areas and you're using new equipment to find new collectibles in areas you haven't been to. Like I said before, the combat is rather weak. One aspect I did not like was how the dodge button is mapped to the same button as the crouch. There were plenty of situations where I would want to dodge and my character would end up crouching instead. Some of the enemies require you to successfully dodge them before they show you their weak points. The combat very much felt like it was secondary to everything else. I would have been able to get over these issues more, but the combat gets to the point where it starts to bring down everything else in the game. If combat was regulated to just boss fights or specific combat encounters, then that would have been easier to deal with, but combat is peppered throughout the entire levels and it only hurts the experience. The exploration is generally fun and enjoyable, and part of me wonders if this game would have been a lot better if it didn't include any combat at all. And this goes back to how much fun the exploration is, especially when combat is not involved. Trying to figure out what to use on hand as a way to grab collectibles, along with going off the main path, is really great. While I generally enjoy combat in my games, I wonder if this game would have operated better if the focus was on exploration instead of having combat in the game, and rather the game could have focused on providing more environmental puzzles for you to do or newer kinds of puzzles. Or if the developers really wanted to have combat, then they can really make it feel like an aspect of the game that doesn't feel like an afterthought. As you progress, you will start to notice a repetitive pattern with earning new items to use to get to new areas. You will enter a new area and you cannot hold an item in your hand until you get an upgrade. Once you get the upgrade, you can hold this item in your hand and you can use this to get past new doors. This happens several times and it feels like the game does not do its best to disguise the repetition. Many games have the player doing similar things or completing similar objectives, but the gameplay or story help to disguise this and provide more motivation to the player to continue on. This game was a great example of a game where I kept losing interest as I kept going on. While I enjoyed the silly tone of the world, the story was mainly there to provide context rather than being something memorable. The Metroidvania-like exploration is fun and enjoyable in the available co-op because this gives you an opportunity to solve environmental puzzles with a friend, but all of the prior flaws still remain. Journey to the Savage Planet is a game that I initially enjoyed. The exploration and finding new pieces of equipment to further that exploration was enjoyable. I liked the music and presentation of the world as well. The over-the-top commercials were very entertaining and helped to set a tone for the world. I very much appreciated the option for online co-op, and this only helped the experience. But the game has several flaws that kept me from staying motivated. The combat is very weak, and I feel like this game would have worked better if it only focused on the exploration. The combat encounters can feel tedious and like a chore, with the lack of any really punchy moments and some control issues. This was a game that I put several hours into, but as I kept going, I found myself continually losing interest. I ended up not beating this game because of it, so there is a possibility that the last fourth of the game has it ending really strong, but I just couldn't get there. Overall, I would generally not recommend you play this game, unless you are really interested, and in that case, I would say wait for a deep sale and only play it in co-op with a friend. Thank you very much for watching.